Welcome to Soar America. The Soar America team includes Eric, our pilot, who is going to attempt to fly his glider from coast to coast in a series of connected flights and only be the second person to achieve this goal. The rest of the team includes Julie, Tim, Diane, and Tim and Diane's dogs, Peggy and Ellie. Join us as we soar, camp, and drive across America. So we're in Casa Grande, Arizona, and we are packing up at the RV park where we stayed overnight and heading to the airport for Eric to make his fourth flight. So he had a late night on his last flight. We ended up spending the night in a parking lot, so we took the day off yesterday. It's really hot in Arizona. It's that dry heat, but it's still hot. The evenings are pleasant. So we got a place that we could stay and rest. We needed to restock our food and stacks, so we did that, and we were able to take some showers and spend some time in the pool and just kind of relax. Of course, Eric was planning for his next leg of his journey, so he was busy all day yesterday doing that. We also got some laundry done, so we're feeling pretty good. We can be on the road for a few more days if we need to. But first, we wanted to go back and kind of give you a summary of the first 3 flights. When we get back home to Huntsville, we'll take some time and actually put together a lot more of his footage from the air and go into a lot more detail. I know there's a lot of sailplane pilots who really want to know what he's been seeing up there, what he's finding, and we will do that. It's just too hard to do all that on the road and in the confined space that we have, but we will certainly do that. But this is just a quick summary of the first 3 flights, and we'll stay tuned to see what happens next.
I put a good bit of thought into where my first launch should be. I expected soaring conditions to be better farther south, so I was looking at California. I wanted to be near the coast, but not too near the coast, because conditions within 50 miles or so of the coast are often not good for soaring. I wanted to not have too much airspace to negotiate, or not have a commonly poor soaring area close to the east of where I started. So considering all those factors, I settled on Crystal, the home of the Southern California Soaring Academy.
Well, at least some of the forecasts say it will be windier than I'd like, so we're on our way to the airport. We'll visit with Chris and Julie Bennett, who run the operation there. I'll get a weather workup and advice from Chris and go from there. Could be we don't even open the trailer or try to put the glider together, or it could be a good flying day. Who knows?
The morning of what we had hoped would be the first flight, Friday, May the 7th, I woke up to a wind advisory for the area, 20 to 30 mile per hour winds with gusts over 40. We had been relaxing at our campsite for the last 2 or 3 days, so we went ahead and went to Crystal just in case I could get off a flight. And I talked with Chris and Julie there, and Chris said this is fairly common here, this is nothing to be too concerned about. But it was pretty windy. I think I was the only person there that, other than students. But I went ahead and set the glider up and decided it's within what's safe. The soaring forecast didn't look too great, but I thought maybe I can get up and make a few miles. The actual conditions were windy. It was probably the windiest launch I've ever made by at least a little bit. In the east, the trees around our airport, at least at our airport, tend to block the wind, so you don't get that much wind right at the surface like I did there at Crystal. And the takeoff itself was bumpy. You can see in the video where there's some twitchiness in my wing. That's just turbulence and me correcting, which the small, very light, short span, very light glider is a little more susceptible to that. But it was manageable, safe, not scary, just windy. big thank you to Chris and Julie Bennett. They were very gracious hosts. They spent a lot of time with me and the team. They were very interested in what we were doing, and they were very interested in educating me on their site, the lift in the area, and just making us feel at home, comfortable and safe. So thank you. Top-notch hosting.
So the chase crew loaded up and started heading out, watching Eric's inReach texts and finding his location to see where we needed to go next.
I'm 13 miles from Crystal, just climbed through 10,000 feet.
What?
I am headed east. There's the El Mirage dry lake bed, I believe, and the airstrip.
Extra traffic, Coast Spoopy Victor Mike is on a 5 mile final roadway.
This is the highest I've been so far, a little over 10.4, and the lift is sort of dying out at this altitude, so I don't expect to get much higher, at least not here.
I was not finding lift after the first and basically only good climb of the flight. So I turned toward Apple Valley to keep going east, the direction I wanted to go. I couldn't reach the next place to land from which I would be able to launch. So I made a hard 90 to the left and went toward Apple Valley, somewhere that I could self-launch. I found some lift from there, started going east again, but just couldn't get quite high enough. So came back in, looped around the area searching for lift, didn't find enough, and landed. The landing at Apple Valley was uneventful. It was very windy, but safe. There were no obstructions upwind of the airport to cause a lot of turbulence. No big deal. And the locals there were great. It was a really warm reception. Before I could get the glider pushed 1 minute, there were 3 people there helping me push it off the field. And then they invited me into their hangar to hang out with them and chat, pull up a chair to the table. We just had a good time. A lot of guys sitting in the hangar talking about flying while we waited for the crew to show up. The plan for the flight from Apple Valley was to hopefully make it at least to Blythe, just short of the Arizona border. I really hoped I could make it one launchable airport farther than that, but that was a pretty big jump. 118 miles farther is what it would have taken to reach Buckeye, Arizona, a little west of Phoenix. I wasn't able to make that, so it was a respectable flight as it was, but I would have liked that extra 118 miles. The flight from Apple Valley was my first self-launch of the trip and only my second self-launch ever. So I spent a good bit of time, educating Tim, who had never helped launch a glider before, what he needed to do. So he did great. He ran with the wing for me, and the wing stayed up. I had heard reports that it wasn't worth having a wing runner because they couldn't keep up and they would end up dropping. The wing would drop to the ground. Not a problem. Between the headwind we had and Tim running, even though we were taking off slightly uphill, not a problem at all. It was a good self-launch. So thank you, Tim. Good running.
Just now reaching 9,500 feet, climbing at 8 knots. Not quite within reach of the next safe place to land from where I took off, Apple Valley. Yucca Valley is my next, not safe place to land, but a suitable place for launching. So I don't want to land somewhere I can't launch. I think I need a couple more 1,000 feet.
to make it there, so it'll probably take another thermal, but this is highest climb I've had yet. Coming up on 10,000 feet, still climbing at 6 or 7 knots. Very blue though, and I have a little bit of a headwind aloft. Not much, 10 miles per hour maybe, but that's going to slow me down. If it were a 10 mile per hour tailwind, I'd average 20 miles per hour more. So take what you get. Well, I'm only about 10 miles from Blythe. It's about 3 hours before sunset, and I need another 18,000 feet
3116, out of here.
to make it to Buckeye, which is the next place that I could launch from here. It's over 100 miles beyond Blythe.
Quick Helper 126.7.
I've only been averaging 3.5 knots in thermals,
24 Kilo 9,500.
so I think that works out to about an hour.
530 Sierra Golf crossing 35 and 1.
An hour of thermaling over the next 3 hours. That seems pretty unlikely. So I'll almost definitely land at Blythe and not risk having to land somewhere beyond Blythe and then just trailer the glider back here to launch the next flight. Also, the team is 2.5 hours behind me, so they're just going to get to Blythe half an hour or so before sunset. No need to press on unless I'm pretty sure I can make it the other 100 miles or so. So I'll probably be on the ground within half an hour. I could stay up, but if I'm going to fly day after day, I need to conserve energy. And here is Blythe, the town. Big, flat, green valley in the middle of the desert. And the elevation here is just a few hundred feet above sea level, I believe. Almost 300 feet above sea level, that's it. Right where I am now.
I landed at Blythe simply because there wasn't enough daylight to make it to the next airport to the east from which I could self-launch. And that next airport was 118 miles beyond Blythe. So it was probably going to take a couple of hours to get there, and I just didn't see there being a couple more good hours of soaring left. So I went ahead and landed at Blythe. I probably could have stayed up a little longer if I just wanted airtime, but I chose to conserve energy, go ahead and land. And the landing at Blythe was uneventful. There was no traffic there, just rolled it right off onto a taxiway, no problem. And the crew showed up, we broke it down and took the glider home as usual. Home as usual. The self-launch from Blythe was another total success, no problem. Tim ran the wing again. Again, the wings stayed off the ground, stayed level, no issue. it was a good launch. The flight from Blythe was I really wanted to make it to the El Tiro glider port, the home of the Tucson Soaring Club. They were very welcoming to me and were hoping I could visit. I just couldn't quite make it. That was a pretty big flight. Couldn't quite make that distance. Getting out of Blythe, I expected to be challenging, so I chose to launch a little later, and I expected that because it's next to a fairly wide, low valley. Blythe itself, the airport, is only at 400 or 500 feet above sea level, and that farmed valley right next to it's a little lower still. And it was everything I expected it to be. I had the motor on and off a few times low around the airport before I finally backtracked west a few miles to the hills, found some lift, and managed to climb up. It took me a long time to get to where I had the next landable place to the east or launchable place to the east made. I ended up detouring hard to the northeast 60 miles before I was able to finally eat my way over into the higher ground away from the valley enough to get up and be on my way. So that was a tough escape from Blythe.
Well, it has taken me almost an hour to do, but I've climbed out a little over 7,000 feet. That appears to be about all I'm going to get out of this one. And I see a tiny little wispy cumulus cloud in the distance. It's the first time on this trip so far that I've seen a cumulus cloud I thought I could reach. So I'm going to go for it. Crossing this valley is no gimme. I'm expecting anyway, because it's very low elevation out there, probably damp, cool, compared to the mountains and the desert on either side. So I don't expect much lift crossing the valley. I may veer over to these hills. The valley looks narrower there. Cross it there if this cloud doesn't pay off. Well, I made it across the valley, and as I expected, there was nothing but sink, smooth, light sink all the way across the valley. At least what I expected was no lift. Smooth, light sink. I'm now just a little above 4,000 feet. And I decided to head off to the northeast. There's a nice airport right on in the east edge of this valley, 20 miles north of here. So at least if I sink out and can't get over to where I'd like to end today, I can at least start the next flight on the easy side of this valley. But I found a little bit of a thermal here. I'm trying to make it into something.
7 is 5 miles out on an extended left base runway 17 flight star.
It's just not working out, so I'll move on. Well, moving east to check those hills paid off. I had to go a little bit deep back into them, not at the upwind edge. Didn't find much at the upwind edge. Found a climb. I've just topped out almost at 8,000 feet. That's the highest I've been today. But I am way off course for what I had in mind. I am 38 or so miles north of the line I expected to take. So I'm going to have to study airspace and landing options along this route, but for now I'm moving east toward a few cumulus clouds. I'm not sure I can reach them and keep a safe landing option. So if I can't reach them, I just have to turn around and go back toward my safe landing option, which is behind me now. I have it made with almost 5,000 feet. Well, hallelujah! I finally found a decent thermal. This is the smoothest, most put together, strongest thermal I've found today. It's averaged 7 knots for me so far, averaging between 8 and 9 right now for the last 30 seconds. I'm about to break 10,000 feet. From here, I might be able to glide across the long stretch back toward where I wanted to be which is roughly that direction. I'm going to take it as high as I can. And for the first time, I'm feeling a little bit chilly. I've been hot in the cockpit for 2 hours, the whole flight so far. Well, I've gained close to 1,500 feet in thermals under this cloud so far. I say thermals because the first one I stopped in wasn't so great. It was kind of disorganized, and I pressed on toward the more upwind side of the cloud and found this better climb. I'm approaching 11,000 feet. This may give me what I need. Not quite sure yet. I'm going to concentrate on the thermal for now. I'm in a safe place though right now. I can still reach that airport in the by the river, the one I've been anchored to for so long now. I can still reach it with 5,000 feet. So I'm in a very comfortable position landing wise, even though I'm out over no man's land with no decent airstrip for probably 15 or 20 miles at least in any direction.
Sure.
Well, I almost got to 13,000 under that cloud. I now comfortably have a nice paved airstrip from which I think I could self-launch, made ahead of me in the general direction I wanted to go today, which was east. Always east, unless I have something to detour around. It's a little chilly up here. I just checked and it's 38 degrees outside the cockpit, so I've closed my vents, both of them, and went ahead and put the oxygen on. That's the little puff you hear every few seconds. That's me inhaling. Happy Mother's Day, Mama. I love you. Sorry I'm not there to spend the afternoon with you. We'll make it up when we get home. Well, I'm almost at Casa Grande, 4 miles out. Turning in a little bit of lift just to buy me a little extra altitude to scope out the place before I try to set up and land there. And when you come back around, you're going to see something you don't see every day. Surprised me. A very big hole in the ground. Right there. Wow. Those sides look impossibly steep. If that's a road that spirals down that thing, you'll never catch me driving it. Never know what you'll see from up here.
I hope to make it at least to Buckeye, Arizona, and once I had that reached, I told the team on the ground that. They ended up beating me there, and I got there and realized, okay, I found some more lift, found more altitude, so I decided to go to the Gila Bend Airport. It was a pretty good detour to the right, but it was the next launchable place I could land. I was confused about the time zones, and I thought I had 1 hour less of daylight than I did, and I was just loitering over the airport there, waiting for them to show up, trying to buy time so they could get some pictures and video of landing, something that you don't often get to have happen when you're chasing a glider. Usually the glider gets ahead of the ground crew. So while I was loitering, I found a decent thermal. It wasn't very good. Got high enough that I could make it to the Estrella sailport. So I decided to move on to there. And then it went from there. A couple more airports, I would find a little more lift, and then I could make one more. And eventually, Casa Grande in Arizona was where I ended up. I couldn't find enough lift to get farther than that. It was late. I think it was within half an hour or so of sunset, if I remember correctly. And there was little or no traffic there, so the landing itself was uneventful.
traffic glider Quebec Victor, final 23 Casa Grande.
Gather after 3274, 0 RF bound for the our number button.
So there you have a summary of the first 3 flights. Where he ends up next, we'll just have to wait and see. We will hopefully be getting some more videos out as we have time in our schedule and as our internet connectivity allows. So stay tuned for more on Soar America. Thanks for watching.